Many years ago, I remember stumbling upon this film on YouTube. It was called The Cyclist Special. It was about the CTC, or Cycling Touring Club, in the UK, and how they would organize these, pastoral jaunts into the country. No one wore lycra, and it all looked very civilized. I think seeing this in my formative cycling years, that maybe it set an unrealistic expectation of what bike and train travel looks like on the other side of the Atlantic. Fast forward to almost 20 years later, and we've relocated here to the EU, Spain specifically. And yes, I know Spain isn't the UK. UK isn't in the EU anymore. That's not what this video is about. Regardless, we've heard a lot of good things about long distance train travel in the EU, and Spain specifically, actually. It's said that most cities are about 3 to 6 hours apart by train. So recently we took a train and Brompton trip out to southern Spain, to Granada. How did those expectations that were set so long ago meet up with actual reality? Welcome back, Pathless Peddlers, and if you're new to the channel, we are all about the non-competitive side of cycling, riding party pace. If that's what you're into, you should hit that subscribe button. And also a quick note, big thanks to the folks at Clever Cycles who refurbished and outfitted us with Bromptons for our Spain train and bike exploration. They're one of the US oldest and most knowledgeable Brompton dealers, and they're really well equipped to set you up on the travel-ready Brompton. So if you're in the US and you're thinking about getting a Brompton, definitely give them a visit. Speaking of Bromptons, I think we should give a little reason why it is our bike of choice on this trip. So in terms of train and bike travel in our modern world, even here in the EU, it is a bit of a pain in the butt. Doing it with Bromptons is doing it in easy mode, as it were, or at least easier mode. It has the smallest folded size of any folding bike, and in our experience so far, fits in most luggage bays in trains that we've encountered. One of the stipulations of bringing a bike on the train here in Spain and in other EU countries is that it has to be covered. Something has to go on top of your bike. Some people use bike-specific cases or bike-specific wraps. We've seen people just use plain plastic wrap. Since we have Bromptons, we're using the IKEA Dimpa bag. This is an old school Brompton hack. I think it was originally meant for car tires, but happens to fit a 16-inch Brompton really well. So Laura's Brompton fits fine, but mine, with the wider Joseph Cusack bars and the grips, it's a little bit of a hassle. It fits, but it takes a few minutes to put it in there without tearing off the zipper. Pro tip, by the end of this trip to Granada, I stopped putting the bike in the bag and rather just put the bag on the bike, as it were. So the bottom would be empty. I would just kind of cover it like a car cover and use the roller wheels to wheel it along the platform. And this worked best for my bike. That seems like all they really care about is that it has to be mostly covered. It doesn't have to be fully enclosed. So definitely one big change from the Cyclist Special video and our own experience with trains in the US is that the trains here in Spain have kind of an airline-like security. Depending on the station, there's a slightly different security protocol. In the Girona station, we had no problem putting our luggage through the X-ray machine and rolling the bikes, just walking with the bikes through. In the Madrid station, they had everyone put everything in the scanner. So folded up our bikes, put it in the scanner, as well as our backpack. They had bins, so you had to remove your jackets just like you would in airline security line. So it's definitely one thing to know. There is a security step, and it varies, station to station. Once we were past the security and our bikes were bagged, you get your ticket scan, and then you go down to the platform and await your train. One of two situations will occur. Either the car is already on the track and you just go walk down the platform. It could be a long walk and find your car. This seems to usually happen in larger stations or if you're boarding the train at the end of the line. The second scenario you might encounter is you show up to an empty platform, you're waiting for the train, and when it comes, you have to quickly hop on. This occurs in smaller stations and mid-route on a journey. In Spain, where the cars will land on the platform isn't marked, so it's a complete guessing game. You have no idea if the car that you're going to go on is going to be near you or is going to be a 100-yard walk. So you just have to watch the train zip by and hopefully guess correctly. Because if you guess incorrectly, it can be a frantic 100-meter sprint with all your stuff, looking for the right car and hoping that there's still room in the baggage bay. That's definitely one thing that was a bit of a surprise. We thought they would have figured it out, maybe a little bit better system, showing you where to wait and where the baggage car, hoping those things would be better delineated. So assuming you get on the right car, where do you put your bike? One frustrating thing happened in the States, but also happens here, is it's highly dependent on the carrier, on whether you're on a newer train set or an older train set. Just because the luggage area on the last train you took looks a certain way and was in a certain spot doesn't mean it will be the same on the next train in your journey. Sometimes it's quite spacious with lots of room, like the train we took in Madrid. Sometimes it's a bit smaller or inconvenient. This is where the Brompton becomes a real asset. It's small enough to adapt to most of the spaces we've encountered so far. And worst comes to worst, we found that you could put it in the overhead bin compartment. Just a quick note, this is with the 16-inch Brompton. Likely the newer G-line Bromptons, larger ones with 20-inch wheels, wouldn't fit as easily. We were definitely eyeing the spaces, wondering if a G-line would fit, and I don't think they would in lots of those spaces. Definitely one expectation that wasn't met was bike-specific cars. So unlike the Spikeless Special video, the bike-specific cars of yore are gone. Some trains in Spain, we've heard, have dedicated baggage cars, but there's no way of knowing in advance, at least we don't know, if your train will have one. So it's kind of hard to count on. All that to say is that being flexible and thinking relatively quick on your feet is going to be your friend. While easier than traveling with a full-size bike, sadly, it is not the Cyclist Special of olden times in the UK. Okay, so while I sound like I'm being overly critical of the bike train situation here in Spain, it's only because the Cyclist Special video, I think, sets such high expectations. Compared to the US, the network and amount of places you can go to and the speed in which the train travels is exponentially better. So there's definitely no arguing that. The Amtrak network back in the States is fairly limited, and there's hardly any high-speed rail. I will say, however, in a strange twist, on some Amtrak lines in the US, the experience is better where you're allowed to take a full-size bike without bagging it. This is particularly true on the trains we took in the Pacific Northwest, Portland to Seattle, even the Coast Starlight down the West Coast. In those instances, you don't have to bag the bike. Sometimes there's a baggage car that has bike hooks. It's a little bit closer to the Cyclist Special, but then again, at the cost of not a very wide network and very slow moving trains. So did our bike and train expectations get met on our first kind of long distance Brompton and train journey here in Spain? Sort of. It got met insofar as you could access really cool places with a bike. However, sadly, there weren't any bike-specific amenities per se, which is a bit of a shame because Spain, from what we've seen of it, is a beautiful country with lots of great roads to ride. And it also has a really great rail network. So I think this would be an awesome way to explore the country. It seems easiest, again, like I said, with a Brompton because you can stick it in those small spaces, but it would be even more awesome if you could take a full-size bike fairly easily and just, train and bike all over the country. So here you go, barely moved here a year and we're already complaining about the bike infrastructure or lack thereof. Be sure to stop by our merch store. We've got a whole bunch of new stuff in stock. We've got our ESI Party Pace grips. We've got some new hats, we've got some stickers, and that's how we keep this channel going. There's no big monthly checks from the big bike industry. We're not constantly shilling random products or pushing you towards dodgy things on Amazon. So if you appreciate that, please consider supporting the channel, join us on Patreon, or pick up some merch. As always, keep the supple side down.